The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello friends, thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. This week we're going to cover the Austin FC News of the Week and preview Austin's first match of the 2025 season against Sporting Kansas City. We're also going to play the recording of my appearance on Soccerwise from this week, where I joined Tom Bogert and David Goss to preview Austin FC season. Joining you from the Caribbean, my name is Landon Cottom, and I'm joined as always by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey everybody, I'm Jeremiah Bentley, and Landon, I can't wait to see if any of these clips make it onto like the social, because I am in a hoodie, because it is hoodie weather here in Austin, Texas, and we're recording this on a Monday morning, so I'm drinking coffee, and you should describe your outfit and what you're drinking.
I'm wearing my Pollo FC Austin Beerworks collaboration tank top. I'm holding my microphone in my hand because I'm at a coffee table in a hotel room, and I have in my other hand is a red stripe. It's because you might be judging me. Jeremiah just gave away that it is morning. I'm on island time. The rules are different right now. And B, this is an all-inclusive resort. So if I don't drink a beer right now, I'm leaving money on the table.
I love your appreciation for value there.
Jeremiah, I had a story to tell you about my trip here. Do you ever wear your Moon Tower soccer shirt out in public?
I almost never wear my Moon Tower soccer shirt out in public. I wear my socks out in public fairly often.
Is it because you feel weird about it? Because I feel weird about wearing it out in public.
Yeah, I feel weird about it. I feel like it's an athlete that has their own jersey with their name on the back a little bit if I'm wearing the Moon Tower soccer shirt out in public.
Yeah, I'm on the same page. Occasionally, I will wear it because I like the shirt. I think it looks nice. I like how it fits and feels. And so we're leaving for the airport. I put that shirt on to travel in. And Ashley makes fun of me for putting it on. I was like, we're going to the airport. We're leaving the country. Nobody's going to know what it is. I get to the airport and instantly run into someone from the Austin soccer community who listens to the show and waved at me and caught me wearing my own shirt out in public. The last time I wore my shirt out in public, once again, Ashley made fun of me. I was like, we're going to a quick trip to the grocery store. It'll be fine. And that time, someone recognized me as well. So the moral is I either need to lean into it or just stop wearing it in public. But also, Jeff, I hope you guys had a wonderful trip. I think they are also going to some Caribbean destination. So hopefully the weather is as good there as it is here.
Yeah, I imagine there's no bad times when you're making it that way. And so last week we had the Over Under show with Scott. We talked about a listener forum, so that will be available when you post the show notes. We'll put it online. People will have up until, I guess, Friday night, Saturday morning before the first game to enter.
Yeah, so see if you can beat us. I think some listeners did beat us, right? I think we ended up doing pretty well last year, but there were listeners who beat us. So if you think you can do better than us, and you probably can, check out that forum.
Yeah, and then I'll be doing the North End guys do a best ball league every year with several of the Austin FC podcasts, and now also David Goss, I believe, from Soccerwise is going to join us. So it'll be at least, I think it's 6 podcasts. It'll be live Tuesday night. Tomorrow in our time. Today, probably for many of you, live Tuesday night at 7 p.m. on the North End feed. It's always a fun thing to keep up with during the year. So everybody, be sure to check that out.
All right, should we get into the Austin FC news, Jeremiah?
Yeah, let's get into it. So we had 2 matches this week, preseason. There'll be the final match of the Coachella Valley Invitational. We also had a closed-door game at Q2 Stadium. There were some bits of highlights available from both these matches, but in different formats. So the Coachella Valley Invitational ends up being Charlotte 1, Austin 0. Austin FC posted updates in their WhatsApp, which I didn't even realize such a thing existed. Did you follow any of that, or were you already out of town by the time this happened?
I was checking in on it some. I remember they posted some stuff to the WhatsApp group last year, but I don't fully understand the strategy behind that one. But at least we're getting updates somewhere. But yeah, I did check in on it.
Yeah, and then as we saw the reports out of that one, I think some of this came from Phil and maybe some people that saw clips from there that Austin was moving the ball faster. What was it? Phil it was not the horseshoe of sadness. It's the horseshoe of, what was it, haste, I think, or the horseshoe of urgency. I can't remember. So they still passed the ball around in triangles a little bit, but it was quicker, which I thought was kind of a funny way to frame up the way that Austin was moving the ball.
Yeah, and I mean that was Austin's problem a lot of the time. It's like that is the strategy. Like the passing it around, moving it side to side is the strategy, but you need to do it fast enough to actually catch the other team off guard, and that was the part that Austin has always failed at. So hopefully we are moving in that direction now.
Yep, and the second one was back at Q2 Stadium. This was closed door, but it's also, I believe, like an Apple TV live stream test. So some folks happened to manage to see some of this match, mostly the second half. Osman Bukhari picks up 2 goals in a 2-1 win over Nashville. Managed to see bits of it, and then I think all the goals ended up being posted on the North End podcast social media page. So Bukhari looks great. Good movement. In the second half, Austin had the majority of the ball. Nothing crazy there, because I think we talked off air a little bit about why they do these closed-door matches, and is it for them to experiment and do anything nuts. From what I could see from the bits of it that I saw, didn't really look like the case. That it looked kind of like what we expect out of Austin. And I guess one notable thing is after Bukhari scores his second goal, then he pulled up, looked like he tweaked his hamstring, but it could easily just be this is a preseason match. He scored a second goal. It's time for him to come out and cautionary thing, because it's not like he went to the ground or anything like that. But we should get an update on that sometime this week.
Yeah, I saw folks saying he left on his own power and wasn't limping or anything, but did ask to leave the match. So hopefully he's good to go. We'll talk about that maybe a little more in the Kansas City preview. But I guess other takeaways from these in the Charlotte game, if I remember correctly, it was more of a mixed 11s again, with younger guys, presumed starters, presumed bench players, and then some second team guys in there. And then against Nashville, it was a stronger lineup, not quite the full starting 11, but closer to it. One change being Nico Dvorsarski starting as the 6. He ends up getting the MLS/hockey assist on that first Bukhari goal, which great to see that him getting involved like that so early on. We haven't talked about him a ton in the preseason because he got here a little late. He wasn't really training. Also, he's very young, and guys like that tend to take time to settle in. I hope he can come on and start playing. I don't know that we should expect that, but it would be really, really cool if not only all the people we talked about last week are fighting for midfield spots, but also he's pushing for that time as well. The competition can only be good.
Yeah, and then we get our first Basar Sabovic action too, right? He plays the whole second half. They kind of split time in the same position, so he also gets 45 minutes.
And he played at the 6, is that right?
He did too.
In those minutes?
He did. He played in those minutes there. So they kind of split that position as both of their first time on the field. You see a real potential and depth when everybody gets on the field and gets healthy. It may be a few weeks, right, until with people coming in late and sort of finding their spot and so many transitions. And I think maybe you talk about this a little bit in the Soccerwise bit that we'll play at the end about like these guys getting to know each other being one of the factors that may make Austin not as productive as what we think. I mean, as successful as we think they will all be based upon the serious upgrade in talent during this offseason.
All right. What else should we talk about here?
Well, let's go into the season opening event. So this was, what is the place now? What it was the North Door when we did the original logo launch thing, but it's something else now.
It is called. I was just there and I can't remember.
Okay. Sorry to the people that own the place if you happen to be listening.
Should we look it up?
I don't. Is it relevant to the story? I don't think we really have to.
No, that's fine. Okay, let's keep going.
Okay. So you were there. Why don't you walk through your highlights of the event?
Oh yeah, I mean we knew we were had a busy week. We're leaving, but I always know that I end up enjoying and having a good time at these season opening events. So we made it out, had a good time. The music, the presentation was all really nice. We got to see some players come out and interact with the fans. Nico Estevez came out on stage and said some words to the fans, and it is I don't know. I think it's really cool and fun that how much fans are loving Nico Estevez after how negative his introduction to the club was. It just we talk about this with Goss and Bogert in that segment as well, but just how much the club has tried to make this happen to endear Esteves to the fans, and it seems to be working. And I think he's leaning into it, the club's leaning into it, and the fans are noticing. So that was really cool. We got to see Duber-Sarski and Sabovic out in front of the folks. We're talking about Duber-Sarski. One of the things I was a little concerned about was him adapting to living in another country. It seems like maybe he speaks at least a little bit of English. There in the Coachella Valley games, there was some clips of the game, him in the background talking to Mikael Dessler on the bench. And then at the event, I saw him talking to Sabovic. And I'm pretty sure neither of those guys speak Spanish. And so it seems like Duber-Sarski maybe speaks some English, which should help him adapt here a little bit faster. My other highlight of this event was they start doing... I always forget the names of the songs, but the Even Louder When We're Down chant where everyone jumps and goes crazy. They're playing that song. The Murga's up on stage. I turn around to go to the bar to get another drink, and I see Rodo standing at the bar just by himself, leaned up against the bar, just enjoying the atmosphere. And that image was a lot of fun for me. And then shortly after, people started noticing he was there and going up and taking pictures with him, and he was chatting with everyone. But that was a fun little scene to watch.
Well, I was going to say on Duber-Sarski, he's also been to the Domain already and photographed there. So we do know he's adjusting to the best of Austin culture. And then we got, I guess, a post from Phil West saying that a source being the person who's most likely to know this told Phil that Mirto Uzuni would be in town on Saturday. We'll talk a little bit about him in a moment, but that turned out to be true. And then do you have another story about Rodo and potential player acquisition you want to share?
I haven't been super tuned in to anything with this trip and all, but apologies if I'm telling this tale out of school. I saw Mike Cragnola post this somewhere that he spoke to someone who was at the event, and they have like their battle vest, like their cut-off denim jacket, and they have flags of every player, like the country of every player that plays for Austin FC. That person asked Rodo if he was missing any flags, and Rodo told him, yeah, you are missing one, but you're going to have to wait until this summer. And so we got the little hint from Esteves that, yeah, we have the open spot. Maybe we'll use it, maybe we won't. It seems like Rodo is saying we're going to use it, but it's going to be this summer.
Yeah, and that kind of ties into a rumor that we saw that Austin has shown interest in a 25-year-old Argentine winger, Santiago Gonzalez from Sporting Cristal, but the move was rejected. One, that seems like maybe a negotiating ploy, but two, also the kind of deal where if it was, then you might expect Rodo to come back and make another move at the summer. I mean, and the wing seems like a natural position where one would be looking to fill the one senior, one international slot with, right? Doesn't it to you?
Yeah, I think so. We've got numbers there, but the quality drops pretty quickly after the starters. And so it would mean it would be harder for minutes to come by guys like John Gallagher in that position. CJ Fodre, if he's going to play on the wing at all, it'll be harder for guys like him to get it. But again, we've said this over and over. Good teams have that problem. And if Austin wants to be competitive, that would be a good problem for them to create for themselves.
And then we did get on Saturday the Instagram post from Uzuni from the plane. Seth Rao, of course, knowing the exact flight when it was going, which probably isn't that tough because I think there's it's one of those that comes in from Germany. There's like one flight a day. So once you figure out which one it is, it's a pretty easy one to nail. He talked to, I think the Spanish media talked about having offers in Spain, that he was surprised by Austin, but that one thing that was really important to him was that his buyout clause was met, and Austin was the only team that was committed enough to pay that full number. And then also we got this from Nico. I think this was before the closed door preseason match, that he didn't rule out the possibility that Uzuni would get a few minutes in the first match pending him getting to town and getting the medicals and being in shape, and sort of caveated it by saying they don't want him to lose 4 or 5 games from playing one game, but I don't know. That seems aggressive. I would not expect to see him play in the first match. How about you?
That seems very unlikely to me. I looked it up. His last game was December 21st, 2 months ago. It's not a crazy amount of time, but it's enough for him to have lost match fitness. So if he does play, I would guess it's a 5 to 10 minute cameo at the end, but I would not be shocked if he's not even suited up for that game.
Another piece of news that we got was that the super draftees who, again, when I saw this news, I was like, who are these guys? Like, I'd already forgotten their names. But this is Riley Thomas and Patrick, was it Grishevsky?
I think Grishevsky.
Joined Austin FC 2. Grishevsky's forward. Thomas is a defender. So, I mean, this is not surprising at all. This is probably what's going to happen to almost all of the super draft picks at this point going forward, as they're mostly fodder for the second team. So now Austin FC 2 has 14 players, so still some room to go, including only one keeper, some room to go to fill some slots. So I think maybe is one of the trialists, or at least one of the trialists, possibly an Austin FC 2 fit. I think I saw that somewhere.
Yeah, we've seen a handful of different trialists kind of come and go. They all seem like the profile of second team players. I was curious about Riley Thomas, especially this was mainly my thinking when we thought Dessler was possibly injured. We found out he was just away finalizing his green card, came back fully healthy. So that changed my thinking on it a little bit. But in that period, I was thinking maybe Riley Thomas gets a supplemental deal just to have that little bit of extra depth at fullback. With Dessler healthy and knowing it's not a long-term injury, we have Dessler as the nailed-on starter on the right, Biru on the left. We have Kolmanich on the left, and then Gallagher can float around to either of those. As long as that remains true, and we've got like 3 of those 4 guys available, I don't think there's any need to sign Thomas. But if something happens, we could always bring him up for those short-term loans or potentially give him the supplemental deal later on. But yeah, no big surprise seeing these guys sign with the second team.
Yeah, and then just going through the second team names, this is not surprising at all. But there's been a ton of turnover, especially from the first season and even from last year too. It's like a lot of the guys that were kind of regulars, the Sal Mazzaferro, Bobo, Steve Louis-Jean, like all these guys are gone now and replaced probably by younger and better players. And it's probably, I think you talked about this last season. We expect that to be Rodo's strategy going forward, is maybe not win so much, but use this team to develop talent.
And that should be the use for it, right? Like if you are over the age of 21 and not showing promise of threatening to like get into the first team, unless you are Kevin Cabral's twin brother, you are probably not going to stick around at the MLS second team for very long, and they're going to move on from you pretty quickly. So I think turnover from this team should be expected and is probably a good thing.
Yeah, and then I guess this is probably the last piece of news here. We got the squad numbers for the 2025 season. When we did over-under last week, we knew that Uzuni was going to be number 10, right? And we just kind of blew it from memory, or was that?
Yeah,
Okay.
They hadn't announced it, but I'm pretty sure they posted photos of him in the jersey wearing number 10, and I had just forgotten.
Yeah. So we get the confirmed, the new guys, Ilya Sanchez at 6, Vasquez 9, Uzuni 10, Sabovic 14, and Dubasarski 20. The number changes we'd already gotten before. I thought the coolest part of this thing is on the roster page on the Austin FC website, they have the players pronouncing their own names thing that we know they had available to the Apple TV talent, right? I think through talking to Nate Bukaty last year or the year before about that, but now you can hear the players say their own names. So there should be no questions about how to pronounce it whenever somebody's new to calling an Austin FC match.
Yeah, whether or not we can reproduce it is another thing.
Right.
But we'll at least know how they say it. Did you go through and listen to any of these, Jeremiah? I didn't get a chance to.
I did a couple that I will tell you that they didn't. I couldn't get it to work as well on my phone as I could on the laptop, which is what I was trying to do. So it was trying to link me to the box file, and it wasn't getting in. But I mean, nothing super
if there's
surprising.
like any surprises that we find in there. I feel like we've done a decent job of at least knowing how they say it. Reproducing it's a different thing, but I think we've done a decent job of that.
Yeah, I still think however, now I'm not going to get it right. Bukhari, however, I feel like I'm a little off on that still, even though I think I know how to do it. I just can't make the words work the way that they should.
I think the trick here is English and Spanish are both languages that have a bit of there are norms and rules to accents and where accents go within a word. But there are several other languages where that's not really the case, and you kind of give equal weight to each accent. And so I think that's the way to think about it if you're trying to perfect your pronunciation of his name, is to give each consonant equal weight.
Okay. It feels like a good time to take a break, Landon. I feel like we've covered another into the linguistic part of the the opening bit. So we're going to take a break, and then we get to come back and preview our first match of the year. So I'm excited about that.
All right, let's do it.
When no one is around.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FEF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FEF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community transparency and client education. And they have their own podcast called Summary Judgment. You can check it out wherever you get your podcasts.
You can go to fef.law to find out what makes FEF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's fef.law. Amplify Credit Union is a member-owned financial cooperative that served the needs of Central Texans for over 5 decades. As a credit union, Amplify has no shareholders or parent companies. That means more of your money stays in the community.
Amplify has been the home of fee-free banking since 2022. Their free checking accounts come with 0 overdraft fees or minimum balances. That means Amplify's fee-free checking accounts help you get more mileage from your everyday spending.
Amplify membership is open to any Texas resident. Learn to trust your bank again at Amplify Credit Union. To learn more and to register for free parking at the Amplify Esperanza branch on game day, go to www.goamplify.com/moontower-soccer. All right, we are back. We're going to jump into our Sporting Kansas City preview. I can't believe we are already back to doing match day previews, and I saw you post somewhere, Jeremiah, that you maybe don't remember how, and I am very much feeling that same way.
Yeah, and I think these always come, but they're a little bit different every time, right? Because sometimes last year we'd have an Apple person on, and sometimes we have somebody who like this one, somebody who happens to know the team who helps us out. Sometimes we're just making it up. I will tell you one thing that can be really helpful, at least for these early matches, are these Soccerwise previews, because I did go listen to the Sporting Kansas City ones. The fact that they do have 30 minutes worth of content from local podcasters or local content creators who are experts on the team definitely helps out. Credit to a lot of what I originally wrote in here goes to Apple Plus, Apple TV talent Nate Bucati, who's been on the show a couple times, longtime Sporting KC sportscaster and like big fan of the team. So I kind of wrote the notes out in terms of like Nate's highlights, and I think we can fill in what we know from around there. But just to set the context, so Sporting KC last season was 13th in the West on 31 points, so not a very good year at all. Split the season with Austin. Austin won 3-2 in May in Austin. Sporting KC won the 2-0 in the return leg in June in Kansas City. A lot of changes, but still I would say generally folks do not seem to be too high on how much they're going to finish this year, because there's also a lot of unknowns. We'll get into some of the international signings when we get into it. So the first thing Nate told me is he loves Ilie Sanchez and said that we should get, because he spent like 6 or 7 years in Kansas City, I think, maybe a while.
I don't know if it was that long, but it was at least 5, maybe 6.
Yeah, so loves Ilie, thinks he's a great dude, encourages to spend as much time with him as possible. So it's always good to hear about that. The big change is that they get a new sporting director, Mike Burns. So Peter Vermees was doing both jobs before. That's right? And then so supposedly now he can focus on coaching and not so much on player acquisition. So they moved on from.
I've heard several people say that they still kind of think Vermees will be heavily involved in that role, and that like he's probably not willing to fully give it up, which I don't know how encouraging that is to SKC fans, but that seems to be the general consensus on what's actually happening there.
Yeah, that's probably fair. I mean, you've done that for so long, you're not all of a sudden going to want to step away from it. But more or less, almost everybody you've heard of for the times that Austin's been playing from Kansas City. So Alan Polito, Johnny Russell, Tim Melia, Andrew Fontes, all gone. Their main priorities in off seasons were add a number 10, a winger, and a number 9. So they get Dejan Joveljic. Have we talked about this deal? I guess just in terms of,
I think we did
trade.
briefly, in terms of the cash trade system, yeah.
So he comes in, had 21 goals and 6 assists for LA Galaxy last year. This is the international move that I think I wanted to talk about a little bit. They bring in Manu Garcia and Sheppy Suleimanov from a Greek side. Maybe I'm just like scarred by the water knee experience, but like if you're acquiring international players, like finding two guys on the same team does not seem like the most, I don't know, disciplined approach. Like you have the whole world to scout from. Like, what are the odds that two guys that fill your two of your three biggest needs are going to happen to be playing on the same team in Greece?
Yeah, yeah, it could work. I'm not going to say it's not like it can't work, but you're right. We have experienced the negative side of that strategy. And it also, like, looking at these, I haven't watched these guys at all, so I'm speaking from a space of ignorance here. But just looking at these guys' numbers, like Greece is a decent sized league compared to MLS as far as like the top of that league. They'll play in Champions League and things like that. So there is some quality in Greece. These guys did not put up really impressive numbers in Greece and doesn't seem like they have ever really. And so maybe they found diamonds in the rough who are going to come to MLS and flourish, but it does not seem like either of these guys are going to be like 100% the key to their solutions. Joveljic is a different thing. I think Joveljic is a great move. Like he's a proven guy in this league. As long as you can get him some service, he's going to score goals. The rest of it is still a big question mark. And then looking at their defense, they already had some problems along the back line, especially at center back. They lost one center back and haven't really replaced there, haven't upgraded there. So that's going to be a big question mark for them as well.
Yeah, so I think question marks all around. I think Eric Tommy comes back. I asked Nate if there's anybody we should look out for, and he said Jake Davis in midfielder was his sort of potential breakout star.
I like Jake Davis a lot. He played a lot of fullback for them. So Nate seems to think he's going to be more in the midfield this year.
Yeah, he does. He came through his system as a midfielder, but earned his way on the first team when he played at fullback. Then last season moved back into the midfield. He says, I think he will take another big step forward to stake his claim in the middle of the park as the classic number 8. So definitely excited about him.
Jake Davis is kind of their Owen Wolf. I think he's probably a little ahead of progression-wise and is a little older than Owen Wolf, but that mold of like a young guy has shown promise could very well take a big step forward. That being said, I don't think you can rely on Jake Davis to carry your team.
Right, in the way that you wouldn't want Owen Wolf to be the guy carrying this Austin team, right? You need something else. So also, SKC has a CONCACAF Champions match on Tuesday. So they're one of the first teams to play. They'll play Inter Miami on Tuesday. So they will have, hopefully they won't, for their sake, they won't be like leggy after playing, the very first match 5 days before. I couldn't even figure out where they finished. First, I was like, well, how in the world? What kind of screwy like rule setup is it where SKC does end up in there? But they were, I forgot, the U.S. Open Cup runner-up, which qualified them for this tournament. Because you would think a 13th place team is going to be nowhere near CCC. So, like with all that, like what do we expect on Saturday? I know the general opinion on the Slack is that if Austin doesn't win 4-1, the season's going to go down in flames because SKC is terrible and hasn't really gotten any better.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious to see if this Leagues Cup, or is it Leagues Cup or it's Champions Cup,
It's Champions
right?
Cup, yeah.
Okay. They're supposed to play in Kansas City. It's currently well below freezing with chances of snow, and so we'll be watching to see if this game actually happens. And then it's Tuesday to Saturday. In the middle of the season, that's a big enough gap where you wouldn't be that concerned if you're SKC. At the beginning of the season, though, I think that still could be an issue as you're still working into fitness for the first several league games. And so maybe it'll help them get it up to fitness, but maybe the shorter rest will hurt. It's really hard to say. I don't think Austin should make any decisions based on that one way or another. I think the bigger question mark now is to look at what Austin's going to have available. Uzuni, we talked about Uzuni. He just got to town. I would be shocked if he sees the field on Saturday. I really don't expect that to happen. Bukhari, with the injury or the tweak or whatever happened on Saturday, we'll see if he's ready to go. If we don't have those two guys, Savovic is almost certainly not going to be ready to start a game. We're now looking at several of our key guys that we're going to be leaning on for the season, potentially unavailable for this game. I don't think that means disaster, but it's just disappointing. Like, we've been waiting to see these guys get on the field, and if we don't get to see them all together, have to wait a little longer, that's going to be kind of a bummer.
Yeah, do you want to go ahead and predict a lineup for Austin? Sort of maybe with some caveats for these injuries. So obviously, I feel pretty good about the keeper there.
Yeah.
Stuver, I think Dessler and Beater at fullback are kind of no-brainers. Do you think Julio Cascante has been starting alongside Brendan Heinzike a lot in the preseason? Do you think that's the pairing at center back?
I kind of think it will be. Just you like to see your center backs create a relationship, and so we've been seeing these split 11s, but it's kind of been the same two center backs most of the time. And I think Brendan Heinzike is undeniably a starter, and for that reason alone, Julio's been paired with him in a lot of these games. I think that's going to be the pairing. Svatak is a much more defensively sound player than Cascante, but in a team that wants to play with the ball, Julio Cascante isn't a big asset for that. Like, he's really, really good at that kind of stuff. If you can keep him from getting into exposed positions, he's not a huge detriment to this team. That's the question, though. Can they prevent him from getting into those positions? That'll be the rest of the team's job.
Yeah, and one would hope against this Sporting Kansas City team that can happen. So then the midfield, if you think about who's available, it almost has to be Ilie, Owen, Danny is the three, right?
I would think so. Yeah. Again, Sabovic, I'm sure they'll try to get him on the field, but probably not worth trying to start him at the moment. So that is the three that I would be expecting to see right now.
And then up top, we know we'll see Vasquez. Then it gets a little bit dicey. Let's say if Bukhari's healthy, then I would expect you to see Obrian at the other wing, correct?
Yeah, I think Obrian is pretty much nailed on. And one interesting thing we have seen from preseason is Bukhari playing on the left, which he played on the right mostly last year, and then Obrian playing on the right. And so I think either way, we're going to see Obrian on the right wing. And then that question mark is just Bukhari's fitness. Like, is he ready to go? If not, I think we saw John Gallagher playing on the wing in one of these preseason games. Is he the most likely option in that case?
I mean, I think he has to be. Your other choice is moving CJ back to the wing, maybe. I mean, there's not a lot there if you're considering, that you're starting two wingers being out, which kind of goes back to the point that we had earlier about, there's a lot of drop off. Like, Obrian's a great utility player, but you want him to have him as your second choice on both sides, as opposed to relying on him to be, one of, if not your leading goal scorer again, like he was last year. So that's really, it's a position that gets thin pretty quick, unlike the midfield. And then also, right, when you play Gallagher up top, you don't have him as the ability to spell anybody at fullback, and your fullback depth becomes concerning too at that point.
Yeah, it really does. What we lose there, I mean, Bukhari's talent is a big loss if he doesn't play. At the very least, Gallagher does still provide speed there. And so Gallagher will work back, he'll defend, he'll work in the press. So we're not going to lose much there. Probably he's better in those moments, the defensive moments. And then we still have the transition ability to play Gallagher into space, play him in behind. The question mark is, like, after that, like, Gallagher can hit that early cross, he'll get balls in the box. But if Kansas City ends up defending in their box, we're trying to break down, we get into the horseshoe zone, like, Gallagher's not as useful in those moments. And that's going to be where, if that's the way the game goes, I think it could be a big loss. But if we can play in transition more, Gallagher can still be a good asset in those moments.
Yeah, and when it becomes like the idea of chance creation by committee, which Austin seems to be wanting to do, if you don't have Bukhari on, that becomes a bigger problem, because him beating dudes on the ball, right, is part of that, or him drawing extra attention to leave guys open is part of it, as Nico Estevez said, and that becomes not an option. So hopefully it's a not an injury that keeps him out, and we will happen to see him on Saturday. And if not, it'll be a little bit disappointing, but you also hope that SKC at home is a match you can win, even missing one of those guys. Regardless, looking forward to, like, having an actual game. to be able to get excited about. Every offseason we wonder about how we're going to fill content from the end of the season to the start of the next. Somehow it always manages to work out, but it's definitely easier when we have games to talk about and more fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything we're missing game day wise, like last week of preseason? I feel like we always get to this time of year and we're like, oh wait, we didn't talk about this thing and probably should have. Are we missing anything here?
I don't know. I'm sure there's going to be a March the Match of some sort. There will be a TIFO of some sort. There's events. I think there probably will be a welcome event for Uzuni at some point this week. I think
I heard Wednesday is what's
I heard the
going
same.
around.
Yeah.
And then Friday, La Morga will do their annual event. I think that's out at Meanwhile. It's going to be a cold one. I think it's going to be very cold on Friday and then pretty cold still on Saturday. I haven't checked the forecast in a bit. When I looked the other day, it was going to be in the 50s during the game. And so I kind of like a nice cold game to start the season off, as long as it's not raining or in the 30s. But in the 50s, you can bundle up enough to make that a fun night still.
And if you're one of the first 10,000 fans in the stadium, you'll get your Austin FC beanie. So, maybe don't worry about having head cover. You'll get it there if you show up early enough. And then on Tuesday, they're doing, every year they have like a tasting for the media to go through the nude food stuff. I love free food, so I'm going to try to make it, but I don't know how I'll be able to because I also have a job that demands sometimes more of me than letting me go eat free food. But I think that's it. I mean, as far as like the leading up to the week, the first week of the season is, right, like hope springs eternal. So it's always super fun.
That's
A
right.
lot of things going on, and hopefully we will be in as good of a mood next week talking about the results of this match as we are right now.
All right, should we move on to the Soccerwise segment?
Let's do that. Why don't you go ahead and set it up, and then we'll move into that.
Yeah, so I think they posted it today on Monday, or maybe yesterday on Sunday, to their podcast feed, and I saw the video came up today on YouTube as well. So some of you may have already watched it, heard it, whatever. It's going to be, just full disclosure, it's going to be that same segment. So if you haven't heard it yet, that's what we're going to play. If you have, it's going to be that same thing here. I'll give some behind the scenes stuff here. When I joined the call, anybody who's listened to Soccerwise knows the personality of Goss and Bogert, like the big New York, New Jersey manic energy that was already existing in the room before we started the recording. I also got to see Tom Bogert like trying to get a breaking news tweet out the door in real time. And so it was everything I hoped it would be and everything I expected it to be. None of that is a show that they're putting on. That is just who they are, which makes me like them even more.
That's awesome.
I think that's it. Is there anything else we need to set up, or are we good there?
No, I think that's it.
All right. Well, yeah, hang tight. We'll be right back with David Goss and Tom Bogert.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by Sage Wilson Realty. The Sage Wilson team is made up of Austin experts who are client-focused and have over 30 years of combined real estate experience. Our friends at Sage Wilson Realty are giving away 2 tickets to an upcoming match. You can fill out the form in the show notes for your chance to win.
If you or someone you know are in need of Sage real estate advice in Austin, talk to our friends at Sage Wilson Realty. Be sure to check them out online at sagewilson.com.
Our premier sponsor is McGuire Woods Consulting, helping clients in the public affairs space from lobbying at the local, statewide, and federal levels to digital and communications campaigns across the country.
McGuire Woods Consulting has offices in 10 MLS cities and is proud to support Moon Tower Soccer and Austin FC in the 2025 season. Contact our friends at McGuire Woods Consulting at mwcllc.com for more information.
Let's go to Texas. Let's talk a little Austin FC. It is supposed to be a very big year under Adolfo Burrell and the new rebuild for this Austin FC side. It's also, I believe, the host of the All-Star game. So maybe we will be there at some point this year. We love to spend some time with our local hosts. Landon here, Moon Tower Soccer. I've been a guest on your show, so now I get you to come in the opposite direction. Anyone listening to Soccerwise, go check out the show. They do an awesome job covering all things Major League Soccer and soccer in the country on top of Austin, which is going to be one of the fascinating teams this year. So, Landon, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, glad to be here, guys.
It is, Tom, one of the teams that you have spent some time talking about over the last 6 to 8 months. They broke their transfer record last summer. Then they broke their transfer record this offseason. Then they broke their transfer record this offseason. So if I'm right on time, I believe they're about to break their transfer record in the next few minutes. But for what we have right now, we like to do our transfers in or outs. Then we'll play our Doyleisms. We'll talk about this team a little bit. And then we'll get to our over-under from Andrew Wiebe, who is slacking a little bit. And I actually think the line is less New Jersey this time, more Connecticut/Pennsylvania than it has been in the past. But we'll see how we fall on that one. This is a good one to talk about when you start with transfers, Tom. This has been a team that's been central to your life.
Exactly. It's been very, very busy for Austin FC this winter. First of all, they dismissed head coach Josh Wolf, moved very quickly to hire Nico Estevez, and then they went into the market and brought in 2 new huge DPs, just like you said, 2 new club record signings. They had a club record departure. Again, it's a young club, but all of these are serious fees. Sebastian Driussi leaves for $10 million to River Plate. Brandon Vasquez comes in for $10 million from CF Monterrey, and Mirzo Uzuni comes in for just north of $12 million from Granada in Spain. So it's been super, super busy. Those are the 3 biggest moves that they made. I can't wait to see the remade attack. But oh yeah, they had some more additions. They redid the midfield, with Ilya Sanchez, Bisor Sabovic, and Nicholas Duborarsky. Those 3 players could be 3 new starters, but I think Danny Pereira is still going to be playing a big, big part. So Alex Ring is gone, Ethan Finley, Matt Hedges, Joan Valencia, all of those are gone. Jossie's artists are gone. But again, it has been a huge transformation for Austin FC this winter.
It is, Landon, I think something maybe people would say was overdue. It's really the first time we've seen like a big flip of the roster for this club, especially an off-season like this. It is normally one of the teams that it's one piece here or there since expansion, but not all together. What's been sort of your reaction to watching this happen, and what's sort of been the fan base as, moves have come out?
Yeah, whenever Burrell came in, I guess it was in the summer of 2023. We were excited about his pedigree, his contacts, but he'd never done this particular job, right? And so we were curious to see what was going to happen. He wasn't able to make a ton of moves early on because of Austin had a lot of bad contracts that were just kind of impossible to get off of, and so he kind of had to use the spots as they came. And finally, last summer, we got some decently big moves. And then this winter's just been crazy. Lots of insinuation from folks in national media, and then also just things I've heard around town here in Austin, that this ownership group is kind of cheap, and they're not going to spend in every part of the organization. And so I was thinking, like, okay, maybe we're not going to get any of these big guys. Maybe Burrell can do it on the cheap and bring in smart contracts like Guilherme Biru, Mikhail Dessler, Swatok are all really cheap players for the quality that they bring. So, like, okay, maybe that's going to be the way forward. Then we sell Driussi, get way more money than anybody thought we were going to, and bring in Vasquez. At that point, I'm like, okay, that's just a straight swap. So they overspent there because they had the Driussi money. Then the Uzuni thing comes in. It's like, okay, where did all this come from? So we've been as surprised as you guys have been. But talking about the guys going out, Alex Ring, Finley, Hedges, Zardes, these are all the kind of guys that you might say, okay, on-field production-wise, these guys are probably not worth the money they're making, but they're great locker room guys, good guys to have around the team. I think you can afford to have 1 or 2 of those on the team. You can't have 8 of those guys on the team. And that's what Austin has been pretty much its entire existence. And at some point, you got to go out, you got to spend the money, you got to bring in a madman who just wants to score goals. And it seems like that's what they're trying to do now.
There's obviously from the expansion build, right? You're trying to build a culture fast. So that it kind of makes sense over-indexing on that. It's been harder to then readjust. I'm curious, though, from an emotional point of view. Alex Ring, one of first DPs, captain, all those things. Driussi as well, right? That dream season, they were the face of the team. What's it like to watch players like that go? And obviously, it's changed because of the way they've performed and whatever, but what was it like to sort of see those 2 huge pieces walk out the door and know that first sort of era, that first act is done now?
It's really mixed, and I think a lot of our listeners will be hearing this question and knowing that I'm the wrong person to ask, because on the fan spectrum of folks who are there for the for the emotions, for the vibes, to like go to church on Saturday night at the stadium. Those types of folks are really sad to see guys like Alex Ring especially go. The like MLS sickos who read the collective bargaining agreement for fun, all I can see when I look at Alex Ring and Jossie Zardes is their salary cap hit. And so like salute them for their service to the club. Really appreciate Alex Ring especially, man. That first season, he was the only guy every week that I was like, I feel like he did a good job. And I didn't say that about many people that year.
And he got cowboy boots, right? He like loves Texas.
Oh, his little girls were always dressed in boots and hats after the games and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, I salute the guy. Grateful for what he did for the club, but also I can't help but watch the dollar signs walk out the door when that contract ended.
Yeah. So you mentioned some of the other ones: Finley, Hedges, Valencia. Bought out Zardes, so made the effort to clear out a lot of spots. Tom, you talked about the coach. It is one of the big storylines. Josh Wolf let go, and then very quickly, Nico Estevez brought in, which we were on when that happened. I think we were on when you broke the news, and we got a ton of reaction from Austin fans who are like, why are we taking a Dallas coach? Why are we sort of going retread? Like, what's the point of this? What have you made sort of since he started to step in and talk to people around the league about what he could be?
Yeah. So,
sorry.
I thought that was to me. Did I just step on Landon? My bad, Landon.
I don't know. Someone talk. I'm not talking anymore.
So for me, I think both things are true. One, and the more important part for me, I think Nico Estevez deserved another chance in MLS. I've been pushing back at the idea of retread all offseason. Again, look at Ben Olsen. You go on looking up and down the league at a bunch of really good coaches who, for one reason or another, it either didn't work out or didn't work out well enough in their first stop. And guess what? 98% of coaches get fired or let go in some way. This is just the nature of the business. So if you don't want a coach that's never been fired, you don't have many people to choose from unless you do a first-time head coach over and over and over and over again, which doesn't always lead to success. So that's true. I think that Nico Estevez deserved another job. I also very much understand the fans' concern of, well, this is also a former Greg Berhalter assistant. This is also a guy from a Texas team whose problems were the possession felt a little slow or the attack wasn't really living up to its potential. When things went wrong for Josh Wolf in Austin outside of 2022, that was the biggest issue, that and defensive transition. Nico Estevez's issues in Dallas were a little bit different because let's just be honest, the back line did not have a lot of talent. So Nico kind of wanted to play more expansive, and then getting in job-saving mode, he had to be more pragmatic. So I understand why Austin fans would be like, isn't this just Josh Wolf 2.0? And there are similarities there, but there's going to be a lot of differences. It's on Nico to win over the fans. It's on Nico to get the most out of this attack. Again, you have $30 million worth of attacking talent, give or take, between Uzuni, Brandon Vasquez, and Usman Bukhari to try to figure it out. I think that this defensive unit is better, particularly like Brad Stuver in goal is one of the best keepers in the league. The center backs, I wouldn't call them elite, but I think that they're better than what Dallas had under Nico Estevez. So it's a big task. I totally understand why fans would have some consternation, but Nico Estevez deserved another chance, and he has to prove that.
Yeah, whenever my co-host got tipped off to the Estevez hiring before that kind of started getting out, and he told me about it, I was like pretty surprised at the time.
Yeah.
And knew that the fan reaction was going to be negative when it came out. The club has very much been on a charm offensive since the firing of Josh Wolf. They knew that he never really did much to endear himself to the fans as a person, let alone results on the field, but as a person. They threw Estevez in front of fans immediately as soon as he got here. They've been doing that with players. They've been very much trying to open up the club a little bit. A club that was very tight-lipped and kind of closed off under the Reina Wolf era. And so I think all of that has been really, really positive, and I think we'll buy Estevez time with the fans. I don't know. I'm kind of the opinion like maybe that shouldn't matter as much, but it will, and that's the truth. Going back to Tom's point of Estevez deserving another chance, I think a lot of folks here just see his time at Dallas, his time under Berhalter, and those have stigmas to them for various reasons in this country and in this city. But if you look back at his background before that, he coached the Valencia first team when he was in his 20s for a few games. He coached their second team. He was a key member of the coaching staff of their whole academy system that produced a lot of really good talent. And so if you look at that part of his pedigree, and then the fact that he also knows the league, is familiar with MLS, is Spanish, so kind of on the same wavelength as far as what he believes player development and tactical strategy should look like with Burrell, and then they've brought in a bunch of Spanish coaches as well. I think there's a lot to like here. The proof will be in the pudding. We'll see what it looks like when it comes out on the field, but I think Estevez does deserve a chance, and I think that fans have come around to that opinion as well. But if he starts losing games when the season starts, that might turn south pretty quick.
The obvious part that once the news came out was like, right, he has a background in a soccer ideology similar to Burrell, but he has MLS experience. And there aren't really a lot of people that fit that. So I think our assumption was Burrell was just going to tap into his history and just pull someone into the U.S. who hadn't really worked here before.
Names you wouldn't believe, right?
Well,
this is the thing he said over and over. He set himself up for failure with that one.
Yeah, I'm not going to be quoted on that one. That's not my fault. I didn't say that. But then, like, it ends up making sense, right, in the end. And, yeah, so maybe you set yourself up poorly. Obviously, the connection and baggage to Josh Wolf is not easy. Luigi Gonzalez probably thrown in there somewhere as well as a former Texas national team assistant, all of that stuff. But I do think you're looking at someone in Estevez who has his own clear soccer ideas, and that was part of why Greg Berhalter brought him in, was to bring other ideas and sort of challenge him. And he has done a really good job at the academy ranks, which is something that I would hope Austin would be invested in. And like, they need to take the next step of connecting that youth setup to the first team, because they are one of those expansion teams where they sort of built the two separately, which is totally fine. Now you're into the next step of trying to sort of make that leap. And I think Estevez can be a part of that. And we have seen coaches learn a lot, it feels like, from one job not going well and coming out of that to then moving on to the next one. And the hope is that's the case with Estevez here. Let's go to our Doyleism, and then we can jump off the back of that.
Austin's one of the stories of the season, well, the off season, based upon how big they bet on that front line. I mean, they spent almost $25 million on Murto Uzuni and Brandon Vasquez combined. You add in Omar Bukhari, who they had spent $7 million on in the summer window. That's $30 million worth of attacking talent on that front line. And I love that kind of ambition, but I look at the midfield and I'm not exactly sure where the service is going to come from. They went out and they got Basar Sabovic, who, has a decent resume, but he's not a creator. I think they're going to push Danny Pereira up into a free 8 role, and I like him in that role, but it's a risk to have a guy who's been primarily kind of a D-mid or double pivot guy to be your primary feeder of what's supposed to be such a high-powered offense. And then, of course, they're one of the few teams left that plays with 2 overlapping fullbacks. So you're going to see a lot of guys that are just like bombing from end line to end line in theory. Not necessarily in practice, because the head coach, Nico Estevez, he didn't have his Dallas team playing like that. He had one of the fullbacks tucking in and one of the other fullback pushing forward. It was more balanced in the sort of 3-2-2-3 possession shape that we see most managers around the world go for. So there's like a lot of questions. There is unquestionably also much more talent in Austin. I kind of threw up my hands and picked up to finish middle of the pack in the Western Conference. And given their recent history, given their entire history, that would be a pretty good outcome.
I love how it's threw up my hands and then picked them to finish there. A lot there from Doyle. Let's go across the field, though. Let's start in central midfield. Like, Landon, what's your expectation of how this sets up and what the responsibilities are for the roles? Because right now, I think, Tom, in our depth chart, we've got Ilie Sanchez in there as a starter alongside Sabovic and Pereira.
Yeah, first of all, a nice tight 15 seconds there by Matthew Doyle on the Austin FC lines. That's why he threw up his hands. He just kept talking. So Ilie Sanchez, I think he's going to be starting 6 when Austin played St. Louis in their preseason game. He was starting. It was essentially their strongest 11 outside of Uzuni because he's physically not there yet, or physically wasn't there, at least as of Saturday when I watched them play. So that's what I think that the trio is going to be. I don't have exactly the same worries of chance creation for this team. I understand where Doyle's coming from, but they get so much from their wingbacks or fullbacks getting forward. And I think that Ousmane Boukari, he's going to be the chief creator. A lot of teams in MLS use via a number 10, and that makes it a little bit more unpredictable which side you're going to go on. But the way that this team is set up, it's for Mirto Uzuni to play as an inside forward off the left wing. Biro is coming up on the overlap, and a lot of play would make sense going down the right through Boukari. And then you have Uzuni hopefully getting a chance to kind of post up on fullbacks on the back post. You have Brandon Vasquez causing all the havoc he's going to. So I still think that the chief creator is going to be Ousmane Boukari, and the wingbacks are going to do a lot in the attack. That I don't really care that they don't have a natural number 10 in the midfield, because I think that was part of their issues in the past. They couldn't handle defensive transitions. Part of that was one of the technically midfielders was the second forward of Sebastian Driussi. And that works the way in 2022 and the way that you set it up. But if you're getting all of the creation from your wings, then you can play like 3 8s or a 6, an 8.5, and an 8 in that midfield.
Yeah, I that's my take too. Watching the St. Louis preseason game, the Coachella games were the first time we actually got to see what Estevez was doing with this team. And yeah, I think you're right about the starting 11 as far as that midfield goes. I think Sanchez, it's his spot to lose at the 6. Then once Sabovic is in town now and training with the team, so once he's ready to go, I expect him to walk into the starting lineup. That third spot, I think Owen Wolff and Danny Pereira are both going to get a lot of time there. I would expect Danny Pereira to be the starter, but I think Wolff will get a lot of time too. And yeah, talking about the fullbacks, I think these two fullbacks in Dessler and Biru offer some pretty interesting options as far as how you can use them in the St. Louis and Galaxy games the other day. They were often floating one of the fullbacks into midfield, a la like Zinchenko was doing at Manchester City and Arsenal. And then as the ball would rotate around, he'd make an internal run and run to the inside, which Dessler is kind of like a fullback, more in the model of like a central midfielder as opposed to a winger.
Yeah.
And then Biru is just like a really clean on the ball, really creative player. And so I think getting him up the middle and into central spaces is almost more valuable than that straight up traditional fullback overlap. And I think they're going to try to use both of those guys a lot in the buildup, and then in that attacking shape, have at least one of them in the mix, trying to get guys into space.
Yeah, it seems to fit what Estevez likes, right? Having ability to rotate positions a little, because then in this situation, what you're talking about, if a Dessler does go a little bit wider, but you know he's a clean possession player, Boukari can come inside and he can find the game where he wants to and know that he's not going to get caught out in a transition the other way, because Dessler's a safe option. And when he's in possession, you assume he's going to be able to hold the ball and keep the game rotating. You brought up Owen Wolff and Danny Pereira. To me, they are two of the most fascinating players in MLS this season. I think Pereira's ceiling is super high. We are reaching the point in his career where it's, what are you? And like, what are you going to be great at? Like, I was at the USA Venezuela game, and I was the only one who was like only watching Danny Pereira, and of course Patrick Ajerman. Shout out to the guy. But like, and Pereira sat so deep in that game, and I think part of that was like, it's chaos. You've never played with these players before; they don't know what they're doing. But like, he was sitting on top of the center backs, and then when I see him in his best moments in MLS, he's dribbling through the lines and he's creating chances because of his ability to beat guys 1v1 in a central area, which very few players can consistently do. What is his pure position is going to be the question mark still. And then how effective can he be in the things he has to do? Because if he is the highest central midfielder, he's going to have to play some final balls. He is going to have to hit some killer passes around the edge of the 18. Or if it's Owen Wolff, I think Owen Wolff has gotten on the field, and for much as people want to complain about his connection to Josh Wolff and any of that, he's a good player. He deserves to be on the field in MLS. But it was because he was really solid. He was not elite at anything. So if he ends up being that, great. He's someone who can hang around a midfield. If he's going to be a national team player or whatever comes forward, it's what can you do elite. And so I think there's a lot of interesting question marks. But let's hit the front line. Let's talk about expectations. Andrew Wiebe set our over-underline. I'm going to use this just to start this conversation because it makes sense on what we're talking about. He set the over-underline for the team on goals, which I think means we're really talking about this front three. He set it at 56.5 goals in MLS this season. Last year, Austin finished last in the Western Conference with 39. Landon, I'm sure you don't want to think about that, so I'll bring it up again. Austin was the lowest scoring team in the Western Conference. 56.5 would have put them like 11th or 12th in the league. So right outside the top three. It would also put them basically 6th or 7th in the West, which puts you, from a goal scoring point of view, in a playoff conversation. What do you make of that line, Landon? What do you make of the potential of this front three?
Yeah, I'll take the over on that one. I think we did our over-under prediction show this last week, and I think I picked Austin to score 57 goals this year as
right on the line.
So
you going to ask for a push? That'd be incredible if you just said 56.
So yeah, I mean, I don't have any doubt about the quality of these front three guys. They've shown over the last several years that they can produce. I still am a little concerned about, I think Doyle brought it up in his clip, about not having that one chance creator. And like, you don't have to have one guy do it all. Like, you can be successful without the one guy doing it all, but you do have to have the collective do it. And I still just don't know, can this particular collective create enough chances for these guys to score that many goals? Because I think if you get them in the spaces to score, they will do it. And so, yeah, I'll take the over for that reason.
I'm on the over as well because, again, not only do I think that their plan A will be fine, they have a plan B now because of the brute force that Brandon Vasquez can bring to this team. I think that that's going to help a lot on set pieces. And also the other side, like the plan C, but plan B-ish, is Usman Bukhari's pace. So it's not just, hey, if you sit deep and we can't break you down, we're screwed. That's what happened last year. That's what happened in 23. In 22, like, they were killing teams against Driussi, overperformed his XG by a lot. There was a lot of really good players in that attack in that team. Now, again, they have other ways to score that isn't just a 15-pass sequence. Everything goes perfect on the training ground into the game. That's exactly how we drew it up. Like, they're going to get some goals because Brandon Vasquez is just going to bully somebody. They're going to get some goals because Usman Bukhari is just going to run by somebody who's like, oh, I got you, and then he's gone. So, for me, around that number is probably where they fall. If you set that a little higher to be like a top 7 goal-scoring team in the league, then I don't know. But I think to be in the top 12, which is around where over 56.5 would be, I'm taking the over.
Yeah, another thing, mentioning about how Estevez wants to play, from what he said to the media and then what we've seen in these 2 preseason games, he looks like he's going to want to play more in transition, play more vertically at times. And that is where I actually feel quite good about this team, with the speed of Bukhari and then the transition ability of guys like Uzuni and Vasquez. And then like Sabovic and Sanchez, they may not be that lock-picking number 10, but they can hit that pass. Like, they can turn quickly and play that pass into feet. And so those are the moments where I actually feel quite good about that, and I think that's something that Estevez can take advantage of.
One of my things that I've really enjoyed watching at Cincinnati with Brandon Vasquez was his ability to sort of float between, I have to be the highest player in scoring goals, to I can drop in and create, depending on who his partners were. So I'm going to throw another number out here. In Cincinnati, he finished his last year, he had 4 assists. His second last year, he had 8 assists. The year before, he had 3 assists. If I put the line for assists for Brandon Vasquez at 6.5 this year, are you taking over or under?
So for me, I really love Vasquez's game. I think he's unselfish for a center forward. And if he's playing with like a strike partner, if they do spend more time playing out of the 3-5-2 where Bukhari's underneath Uzuni and Vasquez, I think that's an easy over. If they're spending most of the year in a 4-3-3, which I'm expecting them to, but again, things change, then I think I have to go a little bit under, just because like he'll be at the end of everything. In a strike partnership, like when he was with Brenner, he would drop off sometimes and Brenner would run in behind. So that can still happen with Uzuni. I just think that, again, in a 4-3-3, he's going to have less of those opportunities to show how unselfish he is. Again, he'll be great in hold up and everything else, but prime assist locations, I think he'll be more on the other end.
Landon?
Yeah, I agree with that. I'll take the under, but I do think he could get close to it, or even potentially get the over, because of Uzuni. And like Uzuni, regardless of if he's starting as a second striker on the wing, the guy's going to get in the box and try to score goals. Like, that's where he's going to end up more times than not, whenever he gets the opportunity to. And I think just for that reason, and how prolific he scored in Spain the last few years, like a ball is at some point is going to bounce off of Vasquez and Uzuni is going to score it.
I'm going to take the over on both. By the way, I never said on Weebies. I'm going to take the over on assists. I think even if it's a 4-3-3, I think he's going to drop in and get the ball to his feet and create space that he's able to play Bukhari and Uzuni into. And I think that's going to be a huge facet of this team. And I think early on, I think he's going to take a lot of the role because he is the DP now. He has been in MLS. I think if things don't land quickly, perfectly, I think he's going to start to drop in and be like, let's play through me. I can get us through this as things start to settle. I know what it takes to carry us in moments like this. And I think he's now being sort of labeled and paid to be that player. And so I think he'll do that. And I think overall, I think the attack will hit enough over the course of the year that they get there. But they're going to be one of the teams to watch. We're going to do our watchability rankings coming up in MLS. I think we're going to have them pretty high because you talk about $30+ million spent in an attack in Major League Soccer. Like, that's Atlanta stuff. That's Inter Miami stuff. And as you said, Landon, we didn't know that Austin would be one of these teams. And so what's cool is it's not, oh, this team's doing it again. It's a new, member to the party at the top of MLS in terms of spending and what we could see this year. So we are looking forward to it. We are looking forward to getting down to Austin at some point. It's
like an all-star game. I'll see you there.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
I'll drag you guys. If you don't think you're going, I'm dragging you.
Well, it'll be. I think I'll need relief from the heat at some point. So if I can get to Austin in late July and early August, then I can really just relax and hang out. And that's
my mustache is going to burn off. It's going to incendiary.
We'll find out that Tom's is actually made of wax because he can't grow it out that robust. And it'll be melting off his face. But for anyone who doesn't already, Moon Tower Soccer, you can listen to it if you're listening here on Soccerwise and anywhere else. If you're new to Soccerwise, we stream live about MLS twice a week, NWSL as well, covering the national teams 4 to 5 shows a week talking about all things soccer. So welcome and come back again. So Landon, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, y'all. All right, we're back. Big thanks to David and Tom over at Soccerwise for having me on. Check them out. They are really doing excellent work. I've got a lot of time for both of those guys. Really like what they do. Think they're super smart. When they don't know something, they'll say it, and I really respect that as well. And yeah, appreciate them reaching out to us to be part of that for this season. We'd like to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Come find us on the internet, wherever you are on the internet. Thanks so much for listening. We will be back next week to review the first game of the 2025 season, and then we'll preview the first away match in Portland, and then cover any other Austin FC news that breaks. Until then, I'm Landon Cottom.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around.
Think for nothing, you never.
La gente. Oh my God.
Because they love the cheap boom boom sauce.
Yeah.